Good morning again, children. So, for the past 2 days, we have been doing research about the River Amazon and the River Thames. Today, we're going to have a go at writing about the River Amazon. Now, to help you to do that, I've written a model text. But of course, my text isn't about the River Amazon, it's about the longest river in the world. My model text is about the River Nile. Now, before we start working on this, you're going to need some paper and a pencil today. So if you haven't got that, pause the video and go and get some. Okay, so when you're writing about the River Amazon, you're going to need to include the information that you've been collecting together. So things like where does it start, how long is it, what countries does it run through, what cities does it pass, what animals can you find on the River Amazon. So what I've done is I've written about the River Nile and I've written about it in 2 paragraphs. And in those 2 paragraphs, I've said things like where is it, what's its source, how long is it, what countries does it flow through, what tributaries does it have. And in the second paragraph, I've mentioned things like are there any landmarks, does it flood, is the mouth a delta or an estuary, what ocean does it flow into, what's the size of the basin. So I'm going to read it. You can listen to it with me or you can read it for yourself. The River Nile. This river is on the continent of Africa. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that because it's telling you where the river is. This river is on the continent of Africa. If you were describing the Amazon, you might start off by saying this river is on the continent of South America and runs through a number of countries, including, so it's telling us where does it go? It runs through a number of countries, including quite a few countries here, including Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Ethiopia, Kenya, Eritrea, South Sudan, and Sudan. However, it's most famous for being a river in Egypt. Now, I've included that, I've highlighted that bit because that's the thing that most people know about the Amazon, the Nile. If you were writing about the Amazon, you might say it's most famous for being the river that runs through the Amazon rainforest. Now, I've gone on to say that most people consider the Nile to be the longest river in the world. And we don't know its exact length because there's some dispute over the source, but it says with an estimated length of approximately 6,650 kilometres. So let's read that from the beginning. The River Nile. This river is on the continent of Africa and runs through a number of countries, including Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Ethiopia, Kenya, Eritrea, South Sudan, and Sudan. However, it is most famous for being a river in Egypt. Most people consider the Nile to be the longest river in the world, with an estimated length of approximately 6,650 kilometres. There is some disagreement about the source of the Nile. It is formed at the point where the Blue Nile and the White Nile meet in Khartoum in Sudan. But most people consider the source of the Nile to be at Lake Victoria, and that's the starting point. But most people consider the source of the White Nile at Lake Victoria to be the starting point. There is a growing number of people who believe the source of the Blue Nile in the mountains in Rwanda and Ethiopia is the true source of the Nile. So what I've done here is I've said where it is, I said which countries it runs through, I said what the river is famous for, the longest river in the world, given its length, and then I've said something about the source. And just like the River Amazon, people can't agree over the source of the River Nile. So that might help you make a structure when you're writing about the Amazon shortly. In my second paragraph, I said a little bit more. Let's read it together first and then we'll look at it. The Nile, also known as the father of life or mother of all men, flows through the cities of Jinja in Uganda, Juba in South Sudan, Khartoum in Sudan, and Cairo in Egypt. Whilst it still flows past many ancient places such as Karnak, Luxor, and Giza, the Nile no longer floods. This is because of the Aswan High Dam that was constructed in 1960 to stop the damage done by the seasonal flooding of the Nile. It is interesting to note that there are no bridges across the Nile, but the river is travelled by many boats, from small fishing craft to large river cruisers. Home to a vast array of wildlife, the Nile is most famous for its hippos and crocodiles, both deadly creatures in their own right. As it reaches the Mediterranean Sea, the mouth of the Nile forms a famous delta, which is approximately 250 kilometres wide. Taken as a whole, the Nile Basin, the land the river draws water from, is approximately 3.4 million kilometres squared. Okay, so what have we said here? We've said the cities that the Nile flows through. We've said it flows past ancient landmark features. We've said it doesn't flood anymore because of this high dam. So it used to flood, but it doesn't flood anymore. Now, we've also said that there are no bridges across the Nile. It's a bit like the Amazon, isn't it? But that there are many boats on the Nile. We've said that the Nile's got lots of wildlife. In particular, it's got hippos and crocodiles, which are both deadly. Now, we also said that the Nile flows into the Mediterranean Sea, that's the mouth. And we've also said the mouth is a delta, which is a bit like the Amazon, isn't it? The Amazon has a delta for its mouth. We've actually said how wide the delta is because it's quite big. And then we've mentioned the size of the basin, which is approximately 3.4 million kilometres squared. So when I've written about the Nile, I've included where it is, the countries it flows through, what it's famous for, its length, its source. I've also said what cities it flows through, what landmarks you can see on the Nile, mentioned whether it floods or not, and the dam. No bridges, lots of boats, lots of wildlife, and given two examples in particular. And we said that the Nile flows into the Mediterranean Sea, that's its mouth, and that its mouth is a delta, and we said how big the delta is. And we've also said how big is the Nile Basin. Okay, so your job today is to write about the Amazon, and you're going to write 2 paragraphs. Your first one will include these ideas. In fact, this city one, when I think about it, this one here, we formed, I wonder if I can move it, formed the start of that one there. That's right. Okay, let's move that a little bit. Should be able to just shuffle that one up as well, now. Is it going to let me? Fabulous. So, first paragraph, where it is. So, what continent is it on? What countries does it flow through? How long is it? What's its source? Does it have any tributaries? So, the Nile, it says the Blue Nile and the White Nile made the Nile when it joined together in Khartoum in Sudan. And then the second paragraph mentioned what cities it flows through. Are there any landmarks? Does it flood? What's the mouth like? What ocean does it flow into? And what's the size of the basin? So using this page to help you, you might want to jot down these questions. Using this page to help you, and you could also look back at these 2 bits as well. Move the video back and look at those bits as well. And you have a go at writing about the river Amazon. When you've done that, you can send it to me because I would love to see what you have been doing. Now, you can write it as a Word document if you have access to a computer and send me the document. You can write it on paper and take a picture and send it to me. And I think somebody in our class has even started doing it as a Google Doc, and we've been looking at his work on a Google Doc. Doesn't matter which way you do it, just have a go at writing about the River Amazon for me. And tomorrow we'll have a look at the Nile.